Chapter 5, Confronting the Emotional Challenges Caused by COVID-19, Resources and Tools. Introduction. As adults, we often have the impulse to avoid what we consider annoying: anger, sadness, crying, jealousy, frustration, etc. We tend to look for strategies to distract, we play down the importance of what has happened, we try to make the child see reason. We feel that we have no patience or are embarrassed in the eyes of others because, in some way, we associate the display of these emotions with bad manners, feeling manipulated, bewildered, and not knowing how to act. This great confusion is not by chance, but has been built up historically. In the Middle Ages, for example, a child who cried or raged excessively was considered to be possessed by the devil, and the treatment applied was exorcism. In the 18th century, the blame shifted to parents, accusing them of being too indulgent and spoiling their children. In fact, until the beginning of the 20th century, education manuals spoke of bending the will of the child to make it docile and obedient. In this perspective, crying, tantrums, etc., were the result of the parents' failure to educate in obedience. Today, many books and professionals still consider it in the same way and teach parents to ignore such behaviors so that they disappear, generating many situations of emotional neglect for children. Given that we have spent centuries repressing emotions, it is not surprising that our automatic responses to a child who openly expresses his or her emotions repeat this information that we have acquired from generation to generation. The good news is that we can become aware of these patterns and seek an understanding that will help us to accompany childhood in the best possible way. In this sense, the contributions of neuroscience and psychology are essential, as they give us information to know what a child needs and what he or she can do depending on the moment he or she is in. Brain process. If we rely on the model proposed by Paul MacLean more than 50 years ago, we can see how the brain develops at each stage and what relationship this development has with emotions. Although today we know that all areas of the brain are interconnected and do not function separately, the idea of the triune brain, composed of three parts, is still useful and didactic for what we want to address. As we said, Lean proposes a brain made up of three parts that have emerged at different moments in the evolution of the species, in the same way that they appear at different moments in the development of each human being. The primary or reptilian brain is the first to appear, during the first year of life, and deals with the most instinctive and the regulation of the basic elements of survival: breathing, heart rate, balance. This brain controls instinctive behavior and thoughts for survival, such as dominance, territoriality, aggression. From here, responses are direct, instinctive. The limbic brain is the emotional brain, which matures around the age of 4 or 6. It is a system based on mechanisms of avoidance, unpleasant sensations such as pain and attraction, pleasant sensations such as pleasure. This system allows the basic survival processes of the reptilian brain to interact with elements of the external world, resulting in the expression of emotions from this relationship between the internal and the external. The higher brain or neocortex begins to mature from about the age of 6, up to the age of 12 or 13, and deals with the rational, enabling logical thinking and consciousness itself. This is the area of the brain that controls all higher mental functions and executive functions, planning and anticipating results, establishing a strategy or behavior to follow, etc. It also allows behavioral control, impulse and emotion management and inhibition of non-adaptive behavioral patterns, as well as the recording and consolidation of new patterns. It is only at this stage that it is possible to begin to take others into consideration, and to look for strategies for a better coexistence in a group. Why is it essential to take this into account in order to better accompany children? Because this biological structure greatly conditions a child's behavior and it is essential to take it into account. From what we have shared, we can draw the following conclusions. 1. If the evolutionary development of the brain shows us that the neocortex does not begin to mature before the age of 6, it is impossible to conceive of manipulation in young children, since deception is a higher cognitive capacity associated with the rational. Crying and tantrums, then, cannot be a mechanism of manipulation simply because the capacity for it does not yet exist. 2. If they are not yet well developed in the area of logical thinking, an intervention that seeks to get the child to explain what they are feeling or what has happened is useless. It is also useless for the adult to make a speech about how upsetting the expressed emotion is, because the child is incapable of understanding it. The only thing he will understand is that he is not allowed to express what he is feeling, and he will be left without being able to use the most essential tools to release the tension he is experiencing. Especially in early childhood, children essentially live emotionally and not rationally, experiencing reality with strong emotional reactions that they need to express and experience. If, when we are small, we are not allowed to express our emotions and release accumulated tensions, as adults we may seek to avoid these emotions and not allow the children around us to express them. As this would cause us great anguish and discomfort, it connects us with everything we repress and, in order to control it, we seek to control the child's emotions. To say that the nervous system is in full development throughout childhood means that, during this time, the neural connections, pathways are established that will remain engraved as automatic patterns of behavior in the future. In other words, it is during this period that the automatic bases of our behavior and management of emotions as adults are built, which is why the way we intervene with children is so important and decisive for their emotional health. In the next post, we will talk about what the basic emotions are, what they are for, and what adults can do to teach kids to live in a respectful and loving way. Emotions and breathing. How to identify the difference between our emotions and our feelings. Emotional ambivalence. Processing obstacles. Emotions. Dynamics, emotional management sessions, planets. Although there are slight variations in the final list, most authors agree that there are 6 basic emotions: fear, anger, joy, surprise, disgust, sadness. They are called basic because they are the emotions that all human beings bring with us when we come into the world, and can be observed even in very young babies through their facial expressions, for example. Curiously, despite the fact that science has recognized the existence of these emotions for decades, in our Western and rational culture, they are perceived as a kind of hindrance to good mental and adult functioning, something to be eliminated, or at least hidden, in the name of social relations based on appearance, on showing ourselves in a different way to how we feel inside. Haven't we heard things like that since we were little? To change our outlook, it is essential to recover emotions as something biologically inherent to human beings, and also with very important functions for our physical and mental health. Even the most unpleasant emotions have important functions in social adaptation and personal development, a real gift. Emotions have 3 main functions. The first is adaptive, i.e., emotions prepare the organism for appropriate behavior in each situation, allowing every living being to adapt to its environment. For example, if I feel fear, the body prepares to protect itself; if I feel anger, it prepares to attack. Joy is linked to reproduction, disgust to rejection, surprise to exploration, and so on. The second function is social. Each emotion conveys to others how one is feeling, allowing the group to quickly identify the mood and react accordingly. If we see someone cheerful, we read that they are friendly and may move closer. If we see someone angry, we tend to move away, etc. It is a quick and effective mechanism of social communication. The third function of emotions is motivational, i.e., emotion energizes behavior. Emotionally charged behavior is performed more vigorously and quickly. Thus, anger facilitates defensive reactions, joy facilitates interpersonal attraction, surprise facilitates attention to novel stimuli, etc. The basic emotions could be classified into 6. 1. Anger. It is usually experienced as an impulse that gives information about the need to protect oneself, to defend oneself, which does not mean that the motive is real. The loss of control can lead to aggression, to attack. It can be the result of a feeling of impotence or frustration. It may arise as a necessary vomiting, but it is more favorable not to vomit on anyone and to look for the right place and the right moment. 2. Disgust usually warns us that something will not be pleasurable. Mainly associated with taste and smell, it leads us to reject what we find unpleasant. 3. Fear can be experienced as paralysis, as a bodily blockage, as a need to escape. However, it can also be experienced in a counterphobic way, which would lead to confronting the object that provokes the fear. The purpose of this emotion is to be able to react in order to get to safety. 4. Joy. It is an emotion that leads us to expansion, to openness. It speaks of a feeling of joy, of well-being. It is usually accompanied by a smile and a sparkle in the eyes. 5. Sadness. In general, it is related to loss. Listening to it in inner silence gives us information about the loss, brings us closer to a place of introspection and recollection. 6. Surprise. This basic emotion appears when we are unprepared and something comes up suddenly. These are examples of basic emotions. Below, I add a list of emotional states that can help us to enrich our emotional assets and express more precisely what we feel in order to communicate emotionally. There are other relevant feelings such as envy, which we feel when we think we don't have or don't deserve. There are complex emotional states such as guilt, a distressing state that would carry with it anger, fear, and sadness. Guilt does not give information that we have transgressed some internalized norm. Shame is a devastating emotion, worse than guilt. Guilt is a feeling for what we do. Shame is a feeling for what we are. An interesting view synthesizes emotional states, from which we could say that there are two basic feelings from which all our actions stem: love and fear. Although I think it is more accurate to say that there are really only two emotions, pleasure and pain. Love and fear would actually be ways of responding to pleasure or pain. Love would mean that we want to move towards something because we think it will give us pleasure. Fear would mean that we want to move away because we think it will give us pain. We can see life as a river with two banks: pleasure is one, pain is another. The best way to navigate that river is to stay in the middle way. Too much pleasure produces addiction. Too much pain can eclipse your enjoyment of life. Although our natural instinct is to avoid pain, we must deal with it when it occurs. Otherwise, it will resurface later in some form of emotional turbulence. The first step in managing emotions is to take responsibility for what we are feeling. To take this responsibility, we must recognize the emotion. Once you have identified the pain, you can begin to express, release, share, or transform it. Some people also consider happiness to be an emotion. I understand happiness as the natural state of being. An essential state that is fundamentally accompanied by peace and joy, although as a deep essential state it can take on all emotions in a transient way. It is the ability to accept the present moment without rejecting any of that experience. It is opening our arms and realizing that they are full. When my needs are met, I can feel open, absorbed, active, affectionate, fortunate, grateful, cheerful, alert, relieved, lively, animated, peaceful, passionate, astonished, attracted, bold, benevolent, calm, able, caring, captivated, comfortable, compassionate, competent, complacent, understanding, committed, confident, moved, contented, cordial, decisive, restful, clear, committed, confident, moved, contented, cordial, determined, restful, dazzled, clear, awake, unconcerned, joyful, amused, effective, enraptured, excited, enterprising, delighted, energetic, enthusiastic, balanced, hopeful, stimulated, stupendous, euphoric, exalted, exhilarated, excited, expansive, expectant, exuberant, exultant, fascinated, happy, empowered, strong, generous, joyful, humble, illusioned, independent, inspired, interested, intrepid, intrigued, jovial, free, light-hearted, lucid, wonderful, motivated, optimistic, proud, prepared, prosperous, prudent, radiant, accomplished, comforted, rejoiced, relaxed, renewed, satisfied, confident, serene, sociable, surprised, self-confident, tender, calm, courageous, vigorous, alive. When my needs are not met, I can feel overwhelmed, bored, cowed, anguished, distressed, agitated, overwhelmed, exhausted, alarmed, altered, bitter, distressed, anxious, apprehensive, apathetic, apologetic, sorrowful, repentant, disgusted, frightened, terrified, dazed, embarrassed, tired, jealousy, confused, shocked, dismayed, guilty, weak, disappointed, depressed, defeated, dismayed, guilty, weak, decayed, disappointed, depressed, defeated, despondent, disgusted, distanced, angry, scandalized, skeptical, stagnant, exasperated, fatigued, cold, frustrated, furious, hurt, wounded, hostile, impatient, impotent, incapable, uncomfortable, indecisive, indifferent, indignant, unstable, unhappy, restless, insecure, uneasy, unhelpful, irritated, moody, melancholic, annoyed, nervous, paralyzed, passive, lazy, perplexed, disturbed, concerned, reluctant, resentful, withdrawn, overwhelmed, alone, susceptible, fearful, tense, disturbed, sad, defeated. Interpretation of the other, not one's own feeling. Abandoned, cornered, threatened, attacked, trapped, coerced, degraded, downgraded, helpless, neglected, scorned, disadvantaged, stripped, despised, scorned, swindled, excluded, exploited, forced, humiliated, misunderstood, intimidated, invisible, mistreated, manipulated, compelled, forgotten, pressured, demoted, rejected, undervalued, superfluous, betrayed, uprooted, used. If we understand that emotions are intrinsic to us and necessary as a species, we will not seek to educate or repress them, but we will allow them to express themselves. When we prevent emotion from manifesting itself, we generate a double problem. On the one hand, we do not allow them to fulfill their essential functions. On the other hand, these emotions will not disappear, but will seek other ways, more accepted by their environment or, on the contrary, more destructive to get out. In both cases, we are hindering a basic need of childhood of every human being, which is to be able to express how they feel. So, what can we do as adults when a child expresses an emotion? Accompanying emotions. Dynamics emotional accompaniment EMA sessions. First and foremost, embrace it, don't try to eliminate it. It will take a while, perhaps, but with practice we can become relaxed in the face of our children's emotional discharge. At the beginning it is difficult because it connects with our own repressed emotions. We may feel like crying, or want to leave. But the very fact of following and allowing that expression in the child we have in front of us will clear our emotions stored up for so long. As we have already mentioned, emotions are not educated, they are accompanied. To accompany is to be, not to distract the child, not to silence or punish him/her, not to make fun of what he/she expresses, not to compare him/her with other children, not to make ironic comments to other adults because we feel ashamed of what our little one is expressing. That child, at that moment, is absolutely immersed in a series of intense sensations, of physiological, neurological changes, without the capacity to name or understand what is happening to him/her. What we can do is to put words to what she is feeling. Wow, you look sad, or, I think you are very angry, although sometimes being silent can be as helpful, if not more so, than talking. This accompaniment can take a few minutes, or half an hour. There is no right time, but we will clearly notice when the children relax, or stop crying, or spontaneously turn their attention to something else. In general, the more they are in the habit of expressing themselves in the company of an available adult, the easier it is for them to connect with their emotions and then get on with what they are doing. Children who have not been able to cry enough often need more time, because they are bringing out what is happening to them now in addition to what they were not able to express previously. In the case that, along with the emotion, some aggression has occurred, we can differentiate between these two levels. What I feel and what I do, welcome the former and, after securing that emotional connection perhaps even at another time of the day, place a clear limit on the action. I know you were very angry, but I don't let you hit, for example. Usually, we conflate the two and try to limit the emotion itself. If we realize that they are not the same, we can act differently in response to each. We connect authentically with the emotion they are expressing, and then we can clearly express that we don't want them to repeat that action. Depending on their age, it may help to give a brief account of what we have observed. I saw you were playing with that and it broke, they took it away from you, etc. If they are older than 6, we can ask if they want to tell us what happened, as long as they have calmed down completely and it is clear that their answer is not the most important thing. This is just a compliment that can help them to integrate this experience also from a conscious point of view, but often we will see that there is no apparent relationship between the event and the emotion that has been triggered. For this reason, it is not interesting to ask for a cause, as it may simply be something that has filled the cup of many small frustrations, anger, etc., repressed and that finally come out all at once, after a minor incident. As adults, hasn't it ever happened to us that we are fine, and suddenly something everyday happens, we get honked at in traffic, or we miss the metro or bus or train, or something that doesn't really matter much to us breaks down and we are overcome with a deep need to cry? Being able to express oneself openly is key to the mental, psychological and emotional health of a human being. Children urgently need us to validate their emotions because they are predominantly emotional beings. If we do not respect and welcome what they express, we are denying the very essence of the creature before us. On the other hand, if we are ready to look at them with a loving gaze, allowing them to be as they are, we are transmitting that we accept them, just as they are, without having to disconnect from ourselves in order for them to be worthy of our affection. Expressing emotions. In communication, it is necessary to use words as rigorously and clearly as possible if we want to obtain a result that can satisfy our relational needs. We can distinguish between action, sensation, thought, and emotion. Action refers to the factual aspect, it happened. It is the anecdotal record that allows us to describe what happened and how it happened. Sensation is what is perceived through the senses, such as cold, heat, relaxation, tension, I feel. Thinking is a mental process that corresponds to a social construction, beliefs, values, ideas, concepts, memories, norms, I believe, I value. It enables us to classify and assimilate experiences. Emotion is the body's reaction to the mind, I feel. It represents what is experienced through an event, situation, or encounter. Emotions can be categorized into a primary level, which includes instinctive basic feelings like those expressed by a baby when uncomfortable or the fear that protects us from a precipice. There is also a response level that arises as a consequence of mental construction, responding to a belief. The body does not distinguish between what is real and what is fictitious. For example, when exposed to something fictional, like watching a horror movie, the body reacts with emotions and sensations as if it were happening. Based on what the mind registers as a situation of danger or threat, we may experience tension, coldness, sweating, restlessness, anxiety, anguish, fear, and more. It is common to confuse thoughts and emotions, for instance, saying, "I feel like a failure," instead of expressing sadness or powerlessness in a work situation. In the dynamics of communication, the technique of action, sensation, thought, and emotion is used. The objective is to describe the facts and embody them through gestures and expressions. Here is a step-by-step example. 1. Walk around the room slowly and quietly with eyes fixed on the interior. 2. Observe others. 3. When encountering someone, stand in front of them and introspect. 4. Express what you do spontaneously, such as, "I stand and look into your eyes, look at your nose, talk to you, or scratch my head." 5. Find a new person and express the sensations you have, like, "I feel tingling in my solar plexus, heat in my face, and sweat in my hands." 6. With another person, express emotions using the sentence principle, "In front of you, I feel happy, restless, attracted, calm, fearful, averse, or loving." 7. Engage with a new person and express thoughts like, "The thought I have is that I want you to like me, that the exercise is over, that I like your face, or what are you thinking about me?" After going through these steps individually, you can combine them cumulatively without interruptions. 8. Find a new person and express both the fact and the feeling, such as, "I am standing and I look into your eyes, and I feel tingling in my solar plexus, heat in my face, and sweat in my hands." 9. Engage with another person and add an emotion to the previous statement, like, "I am standing and I look into your eyes, and I feel tingling in my solar plexus, heat in my face, sweat in my hands. I feel fear, joy, uneasiness, attraction, aversion, love, or calm." 10. Repeat the process with a new person and add a thought, for example, "I am standing and I look into your eyes, and I feel tingling in my solar plexus, heat in my face, sweat in my hands." Denial of responsibility. A. Know and take responsibility for your emotions. When communicating, it is essential to distinguish between what belongs to you and what belongs to the other person, and to take charge of your own emotions. Your emotions are yours. They give you information about yourself. Others may activate your tensions, but the tensions are yours. What others do may be the stimulus for our feelings, but it is not the cause. We project onto others the things about ourselves that cause us to reject or to get close to them. We turn them into mirrors where we reflect our internal processes. If someone acts wrong, it is because they are wrong. Judgments or blame have no place. Whatever you believe is still a belief, it is not a truth. Being handsome or being ugly is just a point of view. Being smart or dumb, capable or not capable, is just a conceptual judgment. None of it is true. Either way, it is just a concept, it is just a dream. People do not have the power to hurt you. Even if they vociferously denigrate you, if they insult you, it is your decision to consider whether what is happening is insulting or not. When someone irritates or provokes you, it is only your own response that is irritating you. It is your own judgment of the incident that provokes you. When one gets upset, it is not because of what the other is doing, but because of one's own state. We can understand that both pain and pleasure are in one and the same. For example, if the car behind me honks at me, my emotional reaction is to ask myself, "What's wrong with me? Why does that happen to me? Why does it affect me in that way?" It's because he honked at me. It's not like that, he honked, I make it mine. Others have their own opinions according to their belief systems, so nothing they think of me is really related to me, but to them. They may even say to me, "What you say hurts me," but what hurts you is not what I say to you, but the wounds you have that have been hurt by what I have said. It is you yourself who hurts yourself by taking it personally. You create a film in your mind, and in it you are the producer, the director, the protagonist. All the rest of us have secondary roles, it's your film. The way you see that film is based on the agreements you have made with life, your point of view is something personal, yours. It is nobody's truth, but your own. Therefore, if you get angry with me, I know that it is related to you. I am the excuse for you to be angry. And you get angry because you are afraid, because you are facing your fear. If you were not afraid, you would not be angry with me. For example, when someone insults you directly, it has nothing to do with you. What that person says, what he does, the opinions he expresses, respond to the agreements he has established in his own mind. His point of view arises from all the programming he received during his domestication. If someone gives you an opinion and says, "Hey, you're too fat," don't take it personally because the truth is that they are referring to their own feelings, beliefs, and opinions. That person tried to send you their emotional rubbish, and if you accept it, you turn it into your own rubbish. The proper way to receive an evaluation by freeing yourself from its judgmental burden would be, for example, when someone says you are good. This person, given his current perception and disposition, sees me as good, which says nothing about me. Someone else in his place and with his own way of being and perceiving things would see me as bad, which also says nothing about me. Examples of handover and assumption of responsibility, from a you message to a me message. You're making me nervous. I'm getting nervous about what you've done. You make me feel so much pleasure. I feel a lot of pleasure with you right now. You irritate me when you leave papers on the floor. I get irritated when I find papers on the floor because I want them to be tidy and easy to find. Sometimes people say certain things that offend me. Sometimes I get offended because I want them to appreciate what I do and not criticize me. When you told me you weren't coming, I was very upset. I was upset when I found out you weren't coming because I wanted to talk to you about something important. If you don't finish your meal, Mummy will be sad. I'm afraid you won't finish your food because I want you to grow up healthy. In exchanging you messages for me messages lies responsibility for oneself, freedom, awareness of the here and now. Instead of blaming the other for what we feel, we accept responsibility for our emotions. The attempt to avoid responsibility is one of the biggest mistakes we make, because every action has a consequence. Everything we think, everything we do, has a consequence, and if we don't do something, we also get a consequence. So every human being is fully responsible for his or her actions even if he or she doesn't want to be. Recognize your needs. The judgments, criticisms, interpretations we make of other people are expressions of our own needs which, if expressed, are more likely to be met. Examples. You don't understand me. She is saying that her need to be understood is not being met. You were working late this week, your work matters more to you than me. He is asking for attention or affection. Applying the formula, I feel, because I need, makes it possible to connect the feeling with the need. See anger management. We never get angry because of what others say or do, they can be a stimulus, but we have to differentiate stimulus from cause. The cause lies in the moralistic and recriminatory thoughts we have. We analyze and judge someone instead of looking at what needs of ours are not being met. Example. I'm angry because they. I'm angry because I need. When we judge others, we generate violence. We think they are bad or act badly and therefore deserve to be punished. The greater the accusation, the greater the defense and the less likely we are to get our needs met. To manage anger, the first thing to do is to get in touch with your own thoughts at the very moment you get angry. Then you can remember that you don't have to act that way simply because you always have. The important thing is to be alert to it. The first 10 seconds are crucial. If you make it through them, you will often find that the anger has gone away on its own. It is interesting to be physically close to a loved one at the moment when you feel anger. One of the ways to neutralize your hostility is to hold someone's hands, despite your inclination to the contrary, or even to hold the hands of the person who is the object of your anger. And hold on to those hands until you have expressed what you feel and dissipated your anger. Steps to express anger. 1 degree stop, take a deep breath. 2 degrees identify thoughts that contain judgment, observe without judgment. 3 degrees connect with one's own needs. 4 degrees expressing our feelings and needs. D. I don't want to instead of I can't. I can't is false, unless it is physically impossible. We use it to hide from decision making and it acts as a block to your possibilities, you diminish yourself. E. I choose instead of I have to. The have is oppressive and enslaving. It subjects us to a false moral obligation, from which we can only escape by choosing to take responsibility for our decisions. We can replace language that implies a lack of choice with language that recognizes a possibility of choice. Let's stop using slippery slogans that imply should. In doing so, we resist learning, since the expression implies that there is no other option. By saying to yourself, I have to stop smoking, do more exercise, study every day. This compulsion will provoke internal resistance. It will resonate throughout your body and your body will resist the mandate, because it was born free, because it is not the destiny of the human being to submit to the slavery of obligations or rules. Inner judgments are also the expression of unmet needs. We can connect with them and creatively respond to them. Because the only self-response to inner judgments will consist of a good dose of shame, guilt, and self-punishment. The desirable thing to do is to take action out of a desire to contribute to life, not out of guilt, shame, or obligation. So let's change the have to I choose because I want to. Examples of common expressions in which we transfer responsibility for our actions. I have to give notes because the rules require it. I choose to make notes because I want to keep my job. We deny responsibility for our actions when we attribute their cause to diffuse and impersonal forces. I cleaned my room because I had to. Our health status, diagnosis, personal or psychological history, I drink because I am an alcoholic. What others do, I hit my son because he ran across the street. Orders from authority, I lied to the client because my boss told me to. Peer pressure, I started smoking because all my friends were smoking. Institutional policies, norms and rules, I have to expel you for this offense because it is school policy. Roles, I hate going to work, but I have to go to work because I am a husband and a father. Unstoppable impulses, I was overcome by the desire to eat chocolates and I ate them. F. I want instead of I need. We use I need, a need that in itself is highly questionable, shifting responsibility and causing the other person to feel a burden that is not theirs. I need you to love me. G. I would like in the positive, without negation instead of I am afraid. While facing I am afraid and verbalizing it is useful, the expression I would like to opens horizons, takes energy out of the blockage and launches it towards building. H. Judgments. Always, never, all, rarely, often, you are. These are unrealistic terms of judgment, statistically impossible exaggerations, sentences that condition the attitude of those who receive them and provoke a defensive attitude. Are using the catchphrase, I don't know. Using the phrase, I don't know, to express an emotion is self-blocking, based on the assumption that you know what you feel, even if you can't find the answer at the moment. Nor does saying, it's too difficult or complicated, contribute anything. It only makes it heavier and generates reaction instead of action. J. The good-bad terms. They are terms used ad nauseam, dramatically limiting expression when a myriad of adjectives could be used to communicate. They prevent the listener from connecting clearly with what we really feel, and they are value judgments that are oppressive. K. The complaint. Complaining is a common practice, although resorting to complaining only leads to wasting energy, and becoming entangled in a vicious circle in the unconscious attempt not to accept what is at hand. It is necessary to get out, to express emotions, but this expression only liberates when it is a conscious and permitted outlet. In cases where the complaint has a name and surname, i.e. every time you complain about someone, you are saying that you are better than them. To be right. We have already talked about the fact that being right means nothing, because everyone is right. If we lock ourselves into the idea that by believing something we are right, we can go so far as to destroy our relationships in order to defend our position. When a conversation becomes difficult, let us not put our weight on arguing, but on asking questions in order to understand. When you free yourself from the belief and need to be right, to defend your opinions, you are at peace. Choose not to argue, but to dialogue in order to understand the other and to be understood, without seeking to convince. Often we think that the cause of the conflict lies in the wrong attitude of the other person, and so we cancel the ability to look inwards and think from our own vulnerability: what I feel, what I fear, what I want. This introspective path is the one that makes it possible to respond to our needs. You don't need to be right, want to change, or convince others because you think they are wrong. They even have the right to suffer if that is what they want to do. Often people don't want you to tell them something that is true, they just want you to tell them what they want to hear. It happens that these people may not want to communicate, just accept them as they are. And if it's someone you don't need to have a relationship with, then don't have one, because when there is no communication, it's not much fun to have a relationship. Using the verb to be as a possession of truth. To speak to another about me is to express my perception of reality, my feelings, my experiences. But it happens that it is easier to speak from you, deriving responsibility, or from the verb to be, which is instructive and dogmatic, which closes the doors to communication, leaving no room for other visions, because it seems that the truth is being flaunted. This dogmatic attitude, so common and daily practiced, in which we say how things are, provokes internal rejection, alienates and generates a reaction in those who receive it, generates conflicts, and is one of the main causes of the deep isolation we experience. The proposal for the revolution of the everyday is not to say how things or people are, but how I see them, using "it works for me" or "it doesn't work for me." The reproach. Example: but how could you even think of coming in those trousers? Reproach is a socially accepted mechanism, but deep down there is no one who receives it well. It hides three harmful attitudes: accusation, judgment, and condemnation. Obviously, no one likes to receive one. Like any accusation, it says more about the difficulties of the one who makes it than the one who receives it. Gossip. Gossip is a very common behavior that is rarely observed with the necessary rigor. If what you are going to say about others does not respond to constructive sharing, if it only serves to place yourself above the others, entertain your moment and cover up a little emptiness or fear of looking inward, don't say it. Gossip spreads emotional poison, oppresses, creates distance, and perpetuates fear. You can consciously observe and awaken conversations by refusing to participate in gossip. Set a limit, change the subject, say something positive, remain silent, or walk away. Practice until you break the old habit. It only hides fear and weariness of a feeling of emptiness that we try to fill uselessly with other people's stories. Emotional discharge process, rage. Dynamics biography work. If we are interested in reducing violence in the world, let's start by finding out how much we have been neglected in our childhood, what we have done to survive, and how we can cut the chains of emotional revenge today, so that new generations grow up in shelter and love. Violence begins in the lack of motherhood when we are children. All forms of violence, passive or active, concrete or subtle, are generated by the lack of motherhood. That is to say, by the absence of attention, availability, love, arms, empathy, generosity, patience, understanding, mother's milk, body, look and support. Received, or not, from birth and throughout our childhood. From the point of view of the baby that we have been, any experience without sufficient support and sustenance has been hostile, therefore violent. Children need the mothering adult to survive. We need containment, warmth, permanent bodily protection, availability, and emotional closeness from our mother who mediates between the external world and us. However, this has not been our childhood experience. Almost all of us have experienced a level of hostility and emotional distance that has forced us to develop certain survival mechanisms in the face of different levels of loneliness, abandonment, active or passive violence, contempt, humiliation, neglect, or emotional distance. These mechanisms demonstrate how violence is perpetuated in the world. The coping mechanisms will be analogous to the violence received. We will learn to use them in every circumstance, every environment, every emotional bond in order to save ourselves, even if the other, whoever it may be, ends up hurt. We learn these mechanisms during our childhood, we oil them during adolescence, and we deploy them during adulthood, unconsciously. The fact that they are unconscious or automatic reactions, that is, that we exploit, punish, humiliate, despise, or subjugate the other without realizing it, does not make us adults any less responsible. It is precisely our duty to understand our automatics. At some point we will have to address first of all what happened to us when we were children, and what we did afterwards to survive the level of helplessness we suffered. to then accept, understand, and take responsibility for the violence that we deploy today on those who are weaker, that is to say, on those who are children today. I understand that we find gender violence, violence in schools, drug trafficking violence, or social violence appalling. However, this collective violence is a consequence of each of our emotional realities that still vibrate within us as a reaction to our own childhood experiences. Therefore, there is something urgent that each one of us can do, to review with eyes wide open what happened to us, to accept the level of violence we have been subjected to, especially by our own mother, and to recognize the way in which today, each one of us exercises violence on someone weaker. There is a lot to take in before we assume that the violent ones are the others. Human biography you can go and ask, journalistic research work. In what context did the conception take place? Was it desired? How was the pregnancy? How was your birth, natural childbirth, forces, caesarean section, episiotomy? How did your mother feel? Was she in company? What was the first contact like? Was there skin to skin? How was the postpartum period, coming home, showing the baby to the family system? Was there breastfeeding? At what age did you start schooling? How did you feel? Who looked after you on a day-to-day basis? Who told you the stories? Who listened to your fears and worries? What was the relationship around the table, with the food? What was the relationship between your parents like, physical contact, displays of affection? What relevant events in the family system did you have to live through? Dynamics, working with the shadow, video the law of the mirror. Dynamics positioning, the expression of feelings. 1. I feel that you don't love me. It expresses what you think the other person feels, not the feelings of the speaker. I am sad, distressed. 2. I am sad to see you go. 3. When you don't greet me I feel rejected. Express what you think the other person feels. When you don't greet me I feel lonely. 4. I am glad you are coming. 5. You are repulsive. Express what you think of the other person. I am repulsed. 6. It scares me when you say that. 7. I feel like hitting you. Expresses what he imagines he would do. I feel furious with you. 8. I feel misunderstood. Expresses a thought about what the other person is doing. I feel frustrated or discouraged. 9. What you did for me did me a lot of good. It's a vague way of expressing what it feels like. I feel gratified, relieved, and encouraged. 10. I am good for nothing. She expresses what she thinks of herself. I feel skeptical or unhappy about my talent. 11. I feel insignificant to my co-workers. Describe how I think others evaluate me. I feel sad or discouraged. Positioning observation or evaluation. 1. Yesterday Clarice got angry at me for no reason. No reason and anger is an evaluation. She told me she was angry or punched the door. Sad, hurt, scared. 2. Tonight Shaylee was biting her nails while watching TV. 3. Francisco is a good man. Francisco donates part of his salary for the promotion of others. 4. Aurora works too much. This week I work 60h. 5. Paco is aggressive. Chris hit his sister. 6. Francesca has been first in line all week. 7. Mauricio often does not brush his teeth. Twice this week he did not brush his teeth. 8. Miguel did not ask my opinion during the meeting. 9. When I talk to EACEA she keeps complaining. This week Petra called me 3 times, and each time she told me that she doesn't like the way some people treat her. 10. Griselda always procrastinates. Linda studies for exams the night before. 11. Carlos is ugly. I don't find Carlos physically attractive. 12. Nico plays bad football. Nico has not scored a goal in 20 games. 13. If your diet is not balanced, you are going to get sick. Observation is confused with prediction or certainty. I fear you will get sick. 14. Gypsies do not look after their dwellings. It is not specified. I haven't seen them paint the house, or seen how they made a fire inside.